Welcome to study session 5, Meaning and Concepts of News. Introduction. Adequate knowledge of what constitutes news and its type will prepare us fully for the practical exercise of news gathering and reporting from our different beats. We shall therefore devote this study session to discussing the meaning of news. We shall also discuss the types of news, hard news and soft news. Learning outcomes. After you have studied this study session, you should be able to 1. Explain what constitutes news. 2. Distinguish between hard news and soft news. What is news? It is a difficult task to answer the question raised above because news is a concept that has taken up so many identities. As Duyile 2005 posits, nobody has yet come up with a precise, universal definition of news. But we have a lot of journalism principles that can be examined and put together to answer the question. Any occurrence that has significance for the public and is reported is news. Various scholars, based on the individual perspectives of viewing news, have given it various definitions. Joel Librizzi, cited by Mencha 1989, says that news is a departure from the expected, a shift from what we consider the usual, the average, and the ordinary, commonplace or normal. But when an event is so unexpected, when it deviates significantly from the possible, then we have the bizarre, and the bizarre makes good features. Hagbese 2008, while attempting to explain what constitutes news, cites a number of notable journalists who have described news in different ways. One of them is Stanley Walker, one of the great city editors of the New York Herald Tribune, who defines news simply as something more unpredictable than the wind. Another individual that Hagbese cites is Joseph Pulitzer, one of the great American journalists. He uses some exclusive attributes to describe news as anything that is original, distinctive, romantic, thrilling, unique, curious, quaint, humorous, odd, and have to be talked about. Types of news. Basically, there are 2 types of news. These are hard news and soft news features. However, some school of thought believes that there is 3rd type of news. This is enterprise or investigative story, which NARS 2017 describes as stories that uncovers information that few people knew. We shall focus our attention on only the hard and soft variant of news here. 1. Hard news. Hard news is the core of newspapers' content. It is the most important subject of a newspaper. Hard news, also called straight news or breaking news, includes reports of a timely nature that happens the same day or the previous day before its publication on a newspaper or broadcast on radio or TV. Accounts of events or conflict that has just happened or about to happen, such as crime, fire disaster, meetings, protest rallies, speeches, testimony in court cases, accidents, sports, and other events that have immediacy reached 2010. Hard news is the type of news that is devoid of sentimentality and editorialization. Hard news is basically to inform or educate, not to entertain. In hard news, the reporter is not expected to be involved emotionally. It does not include his personal opinions, emotions, views, judgments, or comments. The reporter leaves this for the audience You represent just the bare facts as they are, nothing more. Hard news adopt the traditional, conventional, inverted pyramid style, which involves the use of the 5 Ws and 1H. 5W plus 1H meaning what, who, where, when, why, and how. Nordquist 2017. The facts contained in a hard news are presented in a descending order of relevance and importance. That is, the news starts with the most important element of the news story and goes on to discuss the less important details in a descending order. The first and most important element comes in a first paragraph known as the lead, while other elements in the news story come one after the other in a hierarchical order of relevance. In hard news, the reader does not need to read to the last paragraph before he or she gets the gist of the story. The climax of the story comes in the lead. The first paragraph. Orthodox newspapers present most of their stories in hard news format. Unlike the soft news, the lead of the hard news is short, precise, captivating without trying to create any unnecessary suspense. Soft news. Soft news is often regarded as features. It does not follow descending ordering of events or facts. Its scope is wide and it sometimes neglects tyranny of urgency or immediacy as applicable to hard news. Most times it presents human interest or dramatic stories such as natural disaster or bizarre. Reg 2010, page 17, while describing soft news, says that soft news is defined as the news that entertains or informs, with an emphasis on human interest and novelty, and less immediacy than hard news. For example, a profile about a man who designed model airplane or a story about the effectiveness of diet will be considered soft news. Soft news can also be stories that focus on people, places, or issues that affect readers' life. This type of stories are called feature stories. A story about a growing number of babies suffering from AIDS could be considered a soft news. It isn't less important than hard news, but it isn't news that happened overnight. Instead of being just a factual account of the event, it features or focuses on a particular angle, such as human interest, reaction. As can be seen in rich explanation above, soft news has some elements of sympathy and human sentiments. The reporter may attempt to entertain by bringing in his creativity. He may add his comments, views, or judgments. The lead of a soft news attempts to create suspense. It does not start with the climax. The most important part of a soft news does not necessarily come in the first paragraph. The summary of the story may come somewhere in the middle of the story. Usually, soft news adopts an unconventional start, such as quote, question, or narration. Soft sell magazines, which specialize in reporting non-topical issues, write soft news. Even some orthodox magazines such as Tell, The News Watch, and The News that treat topical issues present most of their stories in soft news feature. Television stations in Nigeria also present some of their stories as soft news. For example, the Newslines and Eyewitness News on NTA network service are a good example of soft news on TV broadcasting. Below is an example of a soft news that presents a crime story. The story starts with a quotation and progresses to build up the storyline in such a manner that suspense is likely to be created in the mind of the reader. Study session summary. In this study session, we observed that news is a concept that is difficult to define. However, in our attempt to explain news, we looked at some definitions and description by scholars and journalists. We could highlight that news is an account of any occurrence that compels reporting because of its significance for the public or significant proportion of the mass audience. We also identify and discuss the two categories of news, hard news and soft news. We further cited examples of news stories to illustrate the difference between hard news and soft news. End of study session 5. Thanks for listening.